Hi everybody, my name is Larry Lesterud. I'm the brewmaster and one of the founders and partners at HiDef Brewing. We're in South Park, downtown Los Angeles, and we brew all our beer over here in this one building. And I'm partners with Trevor and Christina Ward, who are our co-founders. And Trevor was a recording engineer, sound engineer for both film and music. And as a long-term home brewer, decided he wanted to open a brewery, so I partnered with him. So I myself have been a brewer and in the beverage industry as plant manager and brewer for 28 years, both in brewing and in coffee, and also was a brewer mentor for Brewing Academy, and took many interns and began them on the beginning of their careers. So before we get into some of the beers, I want to just talk very briefly about how to taste, because it's not like drinking a beer in the backyard. So it's a little bit different as you pair it with food. And so first thing is that you don't want your beer too cold, because you have aromatics, and you'll see that this beer has a nice little collar on it. You want about a 1/2 inch collar of foam. And the reason for that is because the aromatics are going to be released through the carbonation and through that foam, and you want to get the aroma of the essential oils of the hops, and that's how you do it. And then also when you're tasting, if you swirl the glass around a little bit like this, then you'll get those essential oils, and you'll be able to smell it a little bit better. We're going to concentrate on two different things mainly, and that's going to be the taste of the barley malt and the hops. And so we're going to be looking at, with barley, think of it as beer as food and as bread. And so notice the different kinds of bread character, toasty or malty and so on, that you might get out of that. With the hop aromas, which you're going to be looking for different floral or fruit characteristics. So, and then also I want to say that with tasting, we've got about 12 different beers on tap, and we rotate through different styles. We've got a broad range of beers. You're kind of our captive with just the 6 beers that we're doing now, and we're a little hop heavy on this tasting. So, but everybody's got a different preference or aversion to different flavors, like salinity, tartness, or acidity, and then sweet, sour, and of course bitterness. So, not every beer is for everyone. And it's okay to not like a beer. We have plenty here on tap that we could find one for you, but we're gonna concentrate on these 6 here. And the first one we're gonna talk about is the Lars Pilsner. So that comes in at about 5%. It's a traditional German lager, Pilsner that is, and it's made with all German ingredients, German barley, noble German hops, Hallertau and Tettnanger, and then soft water, and Augustiner Pilsner yeast. And so it's going to have a very authentic German taste style. And it's not very bitter. And what you'll notice is from the hops is a little bit of floral and herbal notes with a little bit of green hay-like quality to it. It's going to be very soft on the palate. And we were talking about pairing with different foods, and it would pair well with fish and chicken, and pretty much on almost everything on this menu. So I'd probably start you with the pretzel and hot mustard on this one. So have a sip of that and try that. And Prost. So the next one we're going to go to is the Headspace Pale Ale. And this one runs 5.8%. And this has a little bit more color than the other one, as you can see. Whereas this has light German malts. This one, American 2-row malt, plus a little bit of British crystal. So you can see that difference in color, just a little bit, a little copper in it. And that's going to give it more of a, what you call a little bit malt sweetness, that is. It's a lot hoppier than the Pilsner is. And so you're going to notice the British crystal malt, that malt sweetness, and then also it's going to have some bready and caramel notes. With the hops, you're going to notice that there's a bit of citrus and pine character to it, and both in the aroma and in the flavor. And this is an old school West Coast style pale ale, along the same lines of, say, a Sierra Nevada pale ale. Not the same hops, not the same malt, but same style. This should pair well with your roast chicken, and should also pair well with the egg noodle dish. And then, okay, so on to our next beer. We have, this is the Lit IPA. This is one of our most popular beers. And this is an old school West Coast IPA, more popularized in the 90s and the early 2000s when I was younger in my career. And as opposed to the West Coast beers that are now dominated by kind of like the San Diego school, so to speak, that are very, very pale, very dry and crisp, and very aggressively bitter. This one here, you can see that there's a certain amount of color to it, and that is from American two-row barley and from British light crystal malts, along with a little bit of wheat. So you get more of a balance on this old school West Coast IPA than you would on the new school San Diego style. Those San Diego styles being somewhat like Lagunitas and Stone IPA. And this is from North Coast, the North Coast of California, San Francisco up, and then also from the Pacific Northwest, from that era. So it's got more balance in malt and hops than, say, the newer West Coast styles would have. So you should notice a little bit of sweet caramelness to the malt, and a little bit more balance, like I said, to the bitterness in comparison to the malt character. As a West Coast style, what you're going to notice are very Pacific Northwest style hops from Yakima Valley, Washington, and those are going to be predominantly pine and grapefruit rind and citrus. But also you're going to get a little bit of dankness from the hops. And you'll also, at the very end note in the aroma, you're going to get a little bit of blueberry from a special hop called Mosaic. And what's going to happen is, as your beer warms up, it's going to start to blossom more. So you get more of the fruitiness coming out of it as your beer warms up. So as it warms up, try to note that blueberry. It's going to be very in the background, but it'll start to get a little bit more fruity as that beer warms up. So Lit is going to be probably the best choice with your chicken schnitzel dish, and although it would go well, probably go really well with the pretzel as well. So you can kind of mix and match some of these beers with many of the foods that you have here. And then going on to the next beer, we have Echo, this here, and you can see that it's a little bit lighter than the Lit. Now, it's got a softer palate. It's a double IPA, but it's on the low end of the alcohol spectrum, ABV, at 7.5% for a double IPA. But it's a little on the malty side, but it's sweet and soft. And that's from malted wheat, unmalted wheat, and unmalted barley. And that gives a softer palate to it. That also allows us to really kind of punch it with the hops a lot more without getting an overperceived bitterness from it. And so you should notice the malt quality as you taste it. And you should notice that soft wheat character, because it's carrying more protein. So that's going to make that body feel soft, give it a nice mouthfeel to it. You'll notice that it's not, like I said, it's not aggressively bitter, but it's got a lot of aroma. So you're going to get a lot of tropical fruit in this from the hops, and then you'll also find a little bit of pineapple in both the flavor and in the aroma. And this one is one of my favorites, in fact. So again, this is also a West Coast style double IPAs, very, very popular throughout the country, but most particularly here on the West Coast. So, and these are all, like I said, West Coast, Pacific Northwest hops. This one would pair either well with the chicken dish or again with the schnitzel. So now we're going to move on to our next beer. This is the Fuzzbox, and this is a raspberry Goza. Goza is an old style from Leipzig, Germany, from the Goza River region. The water that they used from that river had high salinity. And so one of the background flavors you're going to notice in this beer is that there's a slight saltiness to it. but it's also what this beer is kettle soured. And so we brew the beer in the normal way to begin with, but once we get the wort, and wort is unfermented beer, it's just the barley and the water. Once we get that into the kettle, we're going to cool it down to about 110 degrees, and then I'll inoculate it with lactobacillus bacteria. Lactobacillus is the same bacteria that you'd make yogurt or kefir with, and so it's going to get a nice light tartness to it. That'll take about 24 to 36 hours, and then once I get to the right pH and the right acidity, the right flavor for that, then what I'll do is then fire up the kettle and boil the wort just as I would with a normal beer. That will kill the bacteria and prevent further souring of the beer in later stages. So then we're going to ferment it just like we would as a normal beer with yeast, and then about 2 days into fermentation, then I'm going to add a ton of raspberry puree. And the puree, obviously, since it's fruit, has a lot of sugar, so it's going to ferment all that sugar. So what you're going to get in the flavor, though, is a tart acidity. Like I said, that little bit of salinity in the background, and then you're going to get an explosion of raspberry aroma. And that aroma is actually going to fool your senses into thinking that this beer is sweet at first. But then as you finish that sip, what's going to happen is that it's going to dry out and become crisp, and then you'll be left with that nice, pleasant tartness. So this is definitely a dessert beer. Will pair well with both of your desserts, but most particularly with the brownie, because the raspberry will go fantastic with any chocolate or cocoa products. So try this definitely with the brownie. And then we've got one final beer we're going to do, and this one we're saving for last because it's the biggest. And this is a noise violation. And both of these beers, by the way, are best served in a goblet like I'm showing you here to help break out the aromas in the beers. So this one is an homage to my old punk rock days when I used to go into the mosh pits. So this is like a mosh pit in your face. It's big, it's 8.9% alcohol. As the beer warms, you're gonna get the warming sensation of the alcohol. You're gonna get it on the nose in a pleasant way, not like, isopropyl alcohol. It's just gonna be warming. And then you're also gonna get huge malt. We've got 2-row pale malt, and then some light caramel malt. And so this one, it's gonna finish a little bit sweeter because of that, even though it's actually a dry beer, just like the Fuzzbox was. This is a dry beer, but it's so big that you're gonna get a real large sense of malt in this beer. But having that malt, kind of like when I talked about the Echo, having that large malt base allows us to really punch this hard with hops. And so it's got a very high bitterness, but that's balanced with that huge barley sweetness. And then it also allows us to do a double dry hop. And dry hopping is when you put hops in the tank after fermentation. And that allows us to get big aromas. So we do 2 different dry hops in this one. And you should get, again, like all West Coast beers, you should get the pine and the citrus, but you're also going to get some fruity mango. And again, as this warms up, those aromas are just going to come out bigger, and bigger, and bolder. And it's a really nice beer. It's just giant, though. As far as pairing with a beer, I kind of look at this more as the beer equivalent of a whiskey. So it's more of an after-dinner drink, but it would probably go really well with the apple streusel as well, especially after it warms a little bit. But definitely, this is an after-dinner drink. So cheers on that one. Now, I just want to thank the Win for the opportunity to be able to share some of these beers with you, and really hoping you guys have a lot of fun with your beer tasting and food pairing. I'm going to be available along with my partners to do a Zoom with you when you guys go to do that. And then if you want to check out more about us, you can go to HiDefBrewing.com or HiDef Brewing DTLA for our Instagram. We're going to do if you guys come in sometime after your Zoom, let us know that you're with Win, and we'll arrange a 10% discount for you. We got seating indoors and outdoors, food trucks every day, and then also various activities like DJs or open mic nights and so on. But we've also got beer to go in 4-packs and growlers. So hopefully you'll come down and see us. We've got a really cool old building here that you really got to see. And it's been a lot of fun. I hope you guys have a lot of fun doing this. And Prost.